Just not in front of Obama. He's gotta keep it together. Alright, it's the final 2 chapters, the candy, and I am so bloody tired, and my throat hurts, and I'm constantly double guessing myself to see whether or not Obama just tricked Dave into becoming his ultimate self, just like Dirk wanted, and therefore I don't trust anything that just happened right there. Let's just figure out what happens now. From atop the tallest bell tower in the Carapace Kingdom, the sky looks like something painted by a crazy person. The fierce lights of war on the horizon stain the sunset in unnatural hues. Ultraviolet pigments of red and purple slash through the atmosphere in harsh, jagged strokes. The cracks in the sky above are a deceased shade of green. Bright bolts receding like lightning in a storm. Dead Jade, host to the cherub's spirit, floats at the apex of the tower. The blitzkrieg above makes a kaleidoscope of color between the black stripes of her tights. Aradia glides up to meet her, having left Solix on the balcony. Above in the sky, a hole has opened up, one so big it fills the entire radius of her vision. Oh, that's very dramatic. The dead cherub says nothing. Aradia flits in front of her face and looks into her eyes. They're the same black as the vortex above, so absolutely dark that they reflect no light. I think I understand what's going on now. Do you? I mean, I think I understand what I was seeing when I watched as everything broke apart and got swallowed up by the black hole, which is where I ended up too. That black hole, that's basically you, right? Yes. And when you speak of your brother, that's Lord English. Yes. And he's dead. Not just yet. Oh! Then where is he? I see. Gonna keep us in cryptic suspense as usual, are we? Haha, that's fine. Yes, it is. I did think it was odd that we ended up in this timeline after all was said and done. Such a strange and unremarkable place to be after witnessing such awesome calamity. There's something... Aradia pinches her thumb and forefinger together. Off about this place. Just a little bit. Yes, you would think so. Lesser beings have so much trouble perceiving divinity in the uncanny. Lesser? You have proven yourself a valuable servant and pleasant company, but yes, you are lesser. Haha, okay. Well, it could always be worse, I suppose. You said that we were the lucky ones, if I recall correctly. All in this place are luckier than those who are not, in a certain way. But what way is that? The people on this planet seem so... Well, I don't want to be mean, but is that the paradox of living in a utopia when everything is perfect and your every need is met? Is it natural for people to just start crossing blades at imaginary enemies? I doubt that's what troubles you so about this world. Oh? What you've described is a state of empirical ennui resulting from the material circumstances here. But the material circumstances of this world have no objective existential value. This world, unlike the canonical horrors from which it is hermetically insulated, will always fail to meet the combined criteria for truth, relevance, and essentiality that would endow this realm with any real gravity. Its own naturally occurring supply of gravity rather than the artificial supply I had given it. As such, what transpires here is characterized by experimental frivolity. Physically, it is condoned off by the black hole's event horizon. It is safe, untouchable, inescapable. That sounds ominous. It cannot be ominous because it cannot truly be anything with tangible significance. One could describe it as a phantasmal projection confined within my horizon. It was created by a choice that made it possible for that horizon to expand infinitely and to consume infinitely. And since that choice could not coexist with the canon events, this place manifested here to support its consequences. If this world were capable of anything either essential, relevant, or true in some stable combination, then it would perpetuate a corrosive paradox. As such, insulation from what is out there, and the inescapable well it rests in, is what protects all it holds inside, and since I am the embodiment of the black hole in which it rests, I am the one who's protecting this world. Why? If it's so irrelevant, what's the point? It is simply my duty to defend the innocent from destruction, degradation, and disillusion, but there is more to consider than just my nature. As it happens, this projection within me serves as a stable conceptual foothold from which I can sense and resist another growing threat, which is determined to jeopardize the canonical plane of reality. Ah yes, the prince! I still have no idea who he is. Not that I doubt you, really. We had a prince who was a huge jerk who destroyed everything he touched. The prince I'm referring to electively removed himself from this reality in order to strategically consolidate his power. He cannot threaten this world, and yet by sequestering himself elsewhere has become infinitely more dangerous. What makes him so dangerous? I mean, what exactly is it can he do, which is more destructive than what I was seeing just before I came here? The cherub makes a rare physical gesture with her hands to begin framing her next statements. Aradia notes this and strives to listen more closely. Physical destruction is one thing. Obliteration of the entire canvas for all of reality... dang it. I'm getting distracted by the car alarm outside. Don't know if you can hear it. It is pretty loud, though. Obliteration of the entire canvas for all of reality over a given cosmic span is another. And yet there are even more insidious forms of destruction and subversion of life to consider. Methods that are difficult to grasp for those on your plane. Yes, I'm quite inferior, I know, but I'm also very curious. Can you try me? Of course, let's begin by examining the nature of a story. Okay. It'll be easier to do this if we have an example of a story to discuss. Some stories are impossibly long, but others can be quite short. Some can even be a few words. What's your favorite story? My favorite? I don't know how to answer that, really. You don't like stories? Of course I do. But do you mean like a book? A movie? Anything. Pick literally any example you can think of. Okay. There's a famous religious story from my planet about someone called the Signless, who I guess turned out to be my friend's ancestor, which was weird, but that's besides the point. Yes, I know of the tale. How would you tell his story if you were trying to be as brief as possible? Well, a religious martyr attempted to lead a rebellion, but he was killed in a horrible way and shouted very loud, rude word in the process. That's good. Try making it shorter, though. Okay, a martyr tried to rebel, but he was killed horribly and shouted a rude word. Shorter? Wow. A martyr rebelled but died and shouted rudely? Shorter? Oof, okay, how's this? A martyr died and said hell. Perfect. What is the point of this? To establish an extremely short narrative for certain illustrative purposes. I'm going to repeat your story to you, and I want you to listen carefully. A martyr died and said hell. Okay, I listened. That's definitely the short story I just said. Yes. Now I'm going to repeat the story, but change the way I said it very slightly. Listen again, carefully. A martyr died and said hell. That was a little different. I'm not sure that I could describe how, though it was pretty subtle. Yes. You noticed it because I told you to pay attention for a difference. You noticed because you were alert to the fact that there was even something to notice at all. And if you had not been alert to the fact that something could be different about the nature of the voice telling you your story, or to the fact that such differences had a certain significance, you likely would not have noticed. I see. Yes, I think you're right. But now imagine that I told you your story in exactly that way, that I said, a martyr died and said hell. But it was the first time you ever heard that story. Also imagine you couldn't see me and didn't know I existed. And imagine you couldn't even hear the story I just told you with your ears. It simply entered your awareness in some other manner, in a way that was impersonal, almost like one of your own thoughts speaking to you. Okay. Picture that this, all of you, have ever known of this story. The only way it would ever occur to you that the story could be understood by another, and then one day you meet me. You look me up and down and regard me as a discrete, specific individual that I am, and I decide to tell you the story again, using my own words, and it sounds exactly like this. A martyr died and said hell. Huh. Does this change the way you perceive the story you were originally familiar with? I guess a little bit. It's certainly a different way of hearing it, but at least you didn't change any words, so I guess it's not all that different. Exactly. I didn't change any words. But then it was a very short story I told, wasn't it? Sure was. Now imagine it was much longer, and that was only the first line. That's easy to imagine. His was a long story. Quite true. A story as short as the one we've been using cannot accomplish much when it comes to guiding and manipulating one's awareness and emotions. It is a compact, ostensibly commanding a simple and mediative moment of reflection, as a short poem might. The narrative it delivers is freighted upon with inference. It is a pattern imprinted upon the imagination consisting solely of cognitive dark matter, or a sort of notional negative space. But longer stories have the power to draw consciousness into them. They possess arresting and hypnotic qualities which can be used by their tellers to alter the awareness of the listener. Again, I'd like you to imagine this is the only way you've ever known this story. But then it continues. A martyr died and said hell. His final howl of profanity reverberated through the ages. It inspired his devotees during the darkest times of brutal regime. His lessons were guarded, kept secret, espoused in the shadows of tyranny. A vision of peace would inspire those who never conceived of it. And though his death was gruesome, it opened the world to a feeling of hope. His hope echoed through the ages. It gave his disciples the strength to persist as they perished in droves. It was the only light to shine on a dark planet for millions of sweeps, and if you are one so devoted to his teachings, who sees truth in his words, it may be best with great authority that you are wrong. You are foolish to believe his lies, his martyrdom is false, his sacrifice hollow. Repent for your adherence to this illusion now, and perhaps leniency will be your reward. What just happened there? I brought to your attention that the story you were listening to had a speaker with a specific identity, and where there's an identity, there can also be an agenda. I gained the power to bend your consciousness to become more amenable to my narrative agenda by lulling you into a more receptive state through the established rhythm of the story's telling. This was only possible because you were not initially questioning the identity of the teller, or even considering that there was an identity to consider. I guess you're right. Hence, we may view any story as speakerless, or spoken, so as to bring designations to the duality I have just presented. A story may remain speakerless from the beginning until the end, offering no reason for its listener to ever imagine it is of the spoken sort. It can also be spoken from the beginning, which is an upfront announcement to the listener that it carries the perspective of an individual. But a spoken story may also disguise itself as one that is speakerless, as mine just did. The speaker may reveal herself well after speakerless conditions have been established, and then one may ask, was it spoken by the individual all along while remaining masked, or has the speaker suddenly intervened to command a heretofore speakerless tale? Well, in your case, it certainly seems like you're the one speaking all along, but using different voices. That's true. Not all situations are like the one I just demonstrated, though. For as long as the hypothetical speaker of the speakerless story remains masked, then it is true that the story could not be seen as either speakerless or spoken. Both are true as well as neither. It is best seen as a null factor until there is a departure. Once a hidden speaker becomes unmasked, then retroactively the story may be considered spoken all along. And so, too, do we retroactively change how we regard what has already been spoken. Yeah, I guess with our martyr story, by revealing yourself as the teller, it turned out you weren't even sympathetic to the very story it seemed you were trying to get me to invest it in from the beginning. Almost like a mean prank. Yes. And so, there's a very dangerous and destructive quality to these nebulous forces which I have gone to some lengths to demonstrate for you here. Not everyone who is affected by these forces is fit to fully grasp their insidious qualities, or the sense of urgency that they must be resisted with. This is the story of corruption I now must dedicate my existence in this new body to ending once and for all. The cherub falls silent. Aradia takes this to mean this lessons of sorts has ended. She ruminates on it all for a while before speaking again. That's all pretty neat, I guess. So, does this stuff have anything to do with this big hole that just opened in the sky? No. Then what? What are we doing here, oh great muse? Aradia starts giggling. Above, the sky yawns open a little wider. Aradia waits, but gets no response. Even now, when you're being uncharacteristically forthcoming, you're still impossible to talk to. I understand that, though. I was like that when I was dead, too. Like what? Irrepressibly cryptic. I see. So, can I at least take a guess? Yes. He's coming through here, isn't he? Your brother. That's correct. Are we in danger? He'll certainly be very angry, but he will also be wounded, and even on his best day, he would be no match for what I have become. The cherub drifts higher and higher. There's a glint of color at the center of the abyss, a flash like a star going black on the rim of a dying galaxy. Aradia follows behind the cherub, unable to pull her eyes away from the eerie phenomena overhead. What will you do when he comes? The cherub is focused on something very small falling from above. The bright object clutters down from the broken sky and lands in her host's body, outstretched hand. It's a feather, burnt at the edges, flickering orange and green. Consume his body. Absorb his essence, and then using this host, I will generate enough power to move beyond the staggering pull of the event horizon encasing this world. A prison of my own making, which can be escaped only through the supreme unification with my other half. It is crucial to the cosmos that I succeed. The Prince of Heart has to be stopped. And they just dropped that right down, didn't they? Woo! I'm still so glad that I read Meat first. I don't care if it makes a lot more narrative sense in the long run for it being candy than meat. I like the way meat than candy flowed. It keeps so much. I love it so much. Just the way it went. Okay. Last one, we got a postscript. Elsewhere, beyond the horizon, a spaceship tears across a starfield at warp speed. Each dot of distant light stretches to become a spear, hurtling in the opposite direction of the craft faster than any photon ever fired from its surface. The ship was brand new when it departed from Earth's sea, and it doesn't look a day older now, even though many hundreds of days have passed. It seems to be built to look somewhat like a shark, by a designer who wasn't totally sure how many fins a shark had, nor where exactly to stick them on the beast's body. Inside, a hot iron smooths the fabric of an elaborate garment, releasing a gentle hiss of steam. At a glance, it looks like the top of a god-tier costume, but it clearly isn't standard issue. This one's more stylish, more ornate, more anime. Sometimes one finds there simply isn't another word that will do to describe some sick gear. The iron eases the wrinkles out of the icon emblazoned on its chest, a hot pink heart, bisected vertically, hollow in one half. A shiny, graceful metal hand puts the iron down and moves the garment from the ironing board and reaches for the pantaloons. She isn't even sure how he gets these so wrinkly. Perhaps it's all the time he spends training in the hypergravity chamber, assuming they've got one of those on board. Then again, there are times when he seems so high-strung he could wrinkle a good anime costume sitting perfectly still in an armchair. She drapes the pantaloons over the board, then pauses to reach for the candy bowl nearby. She doesn't actually need to eat anymore. The entire concept of eating has been upended for her. It's not about sustenance, or even necessarily about enjoying certain flavors. It's more about staying connected to the vestigial habit reminding her of the humanity she's been forced to abandon. Not any kind of candy would cut it. The sensors of her metal tongue are very particular. Weaker than taste buds and arranged differently. These would taste like some combination of battery acid and wasabi to a human tongue, but to her the flavor is mild, exotic, certainly worth snacking on to pass the time. Human teeth wouldn't stand a chance cracking these, but hers makes short work of turning the candy into fine gravel. One of her more reckless shipmates chipped a tooth trying one, despite repeated warnings to stay away from the stuff. The iron hits a snag on the pantaloons, putting an awkward crease in the ridiculous billowing fabric. She curses and puts the iron down. She decides laundry day is officially over. The guy can just wear a wrinkly pair of pants today for all she cares. It's not like he has an audience despite his best efforts to behave as if he did all the time. She doesn't really enjoy doing laundry or ironing silly anime ensembles, and she considers herself nobody's maid. It's just there hasn't been much to do on the ship. It's not like the old days of her long-ranged interstellar travels, that halcyon period riding a meteor across the abyss for years, with an atmosphere of camaraderie, feelings of optimism, a rewardingly transformative period in everyone's young life. She guesses that this is what things feel like on a long journey when you're older, and with a much smaller crew. She turns off the iron, then wanders off down a corridor. It's nothing like the meteor in here. Brighter, futuristic. Skynet does build a lovely ship, she has to admit. She turns a corner and her foot kicks something. It's a stray ruby slipper. The other one's about 10 feet away down the hall. No sign of their owner anywhere. She'd sigh, except she doesn't breathe anymore. She doesn't consider her to be her maid either, but she reaches down to pick up the slippers nonetheless. She enters a room central to the ship, one that she visits now and then, possibly for sentimental reasons. Or maybe it's just to creep herself out. Situated near the wall is something that looks like a rather elegantly designed iron lung. It's mostly made of glass, with a polished silver trim around the sides and base. There's a digital monitor on the wall. She approaches it and places her hands on the glass with a faint metal clink. She used to live in this body. She dressed in the same clothes she was wearing the day she slipped into the coma. A special tiara replaces her typical hairband, lined with blinking transmitters. The device beams her awareness directly to her current mechanical avatar. She presumes it utilized the same technology that Jade's grandfather once used to build a dreambot for her, which functioned similarly. She knows she'll never be able to inhabit this sleeping body again. She honestly can't decide whether that makes her feel sad or relieved. She ponders the future of her old body. Will it work out as planned? She has to believe it will. It's the only path to achieve permanence for these tenuous bodily accommodations. A jarring sound snaps her out of her reverie. It's an alert, beeping urgently from the cockpit. The robot leaves her entombed living body and runs quickly through the winding corridors. She sits down at the helm and examines the monitor. A new planet is within sensor range. She studies the millions of statistics all pouring in at once. Her pupilless eyes take them all in simultaneously, her head needing only to move a quarter inch from side to side to pan her vision across the data. It's an M-class planet. The right size, right age, right distance from the sun. There's no advanced life yet. It's exactly what they've been looking for all these years. Her heart doesn't beat any faster because its place has been regulated by an internal chip. She consciously accelerates it anyway. It's been a long time since she had the occasion to feel exhilarated. She missed the sensation of the old flesh ticker acting of its own accord. The thoughts in her powerful brain race. What will they name the planet? How long will it take for the ship to arrive? Once the new race has been established and once the new race is established and advanced enough civilization thousands of years from now, who will the lucky kids be? The ones who get the chance to play what will arguably be the most important session in the history of Spurb. She holds her thoughts. They can wait. There's much to discuss. She taps a button, lowers her head a little closer to the mic on the panel. Dirk. She supplies a courtesy pause, as if waiting for him to reply. He usually doesn't. You're gonna want to come see this. Enough time goes by that she begins to wonder if he's asleep. But no, it's just the irritated silence of a man who knows he isn't currently dressed well enough to attend to something important. Are my pantaloons ready yet? Oh gosh. And end with a dab. This is insane. My head hurts. And not just because I probably stopped breathing halfway through this. Getting so invested in a story, you just stop. Okay then. Well then, I look forward to the next part of this story where both the meat and candy paths meet into like a weird mesh of candied meat, and we're all like, what? But now I'm beginning to see it wasn't a choose your own adventure all along. It's just two different paths because John freaking flipped the coin. That wasn't technically a coin, just like Dave mentioned. And, well, I just can't. But yes, so good. If you guys have just got on the, candy path, haven't seen meat path is just as crazy and insane, if not more so. And I look forward to editing every single one of these. Oh, I'm being slightly sarcastic. I'm just glad that I'm done filming these and I can get back to just editing non-stop. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to what is possibly like the craziest thing I've recorded, and my head hurts. Ow. I will see you guys all next time. Hopefully this doesn't take me forever to accomplish. See ya.
Hey there. Consider becoming a patron, just like the phenomenal Gerald Thomas and Bleed Red.